probably heard these terms thrown around a ton. AI, machine learning, generative AI. They're all over the place, and honestly, they often get used like they're the same thing. But they're not. So what is the actual difference? Let's break it down step by step and get a super clear picture of how it all fits together. Right, that's the big question, isn't it? AI, ML, DL, Gen AI, it feels like a bowl of alphabet soup. They are all connected, for sure, but they are absolutely not interchangeable. So that's what we're going to tackle. We're going to build out a really simple, clear picture to show you exactly how these powerful technologies stack on top of each other.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with a really big picture with artificial intelligence itself. Then we'll zoom in, layer by layer, first into machine learning, then even deeper with deep learning, and finally, we'll land on the tech that's completely changing the world as we know it, generative AI. Stick with me and you'll see how it all connects.
All right, let's kick things off with the big one, artificial intelligence. This is the granddaddy of them all, the entire umbrella term that everything else we're going to talk about fits under. Okay, to make this super easy to wrap your head around, just think of AI as this giant circle. It covers any and every attempt to make a machine act intelligently. This is our starting point. It's the whole universe for this conversation. So what is AI really? At its heart, it's this huge, ambitious idea of getting machines to simulate human intelligence. We're talking about the ability to learn new things, to reason through problems, and to figure things out on their own. That's the ultimate goal of the entire field.
And look, AI has been around for a while. It's not some brand new thing. Way back in the 80s and 90s, we had what were called expert systems. Think of them as being built with a massive, rigid instruction manual written by humans. But then, around the 2010s, the whole game just changed.
And that big shift? Well, that brings us right to our next layer, machine learning. This is where things get really, really interesting, because the entire approach to creating that intelligence gets flipped on its head. So let's pop that into our diagram. See? Machine learning isn't some separate idea. It's a specific and incredibly powerful way of doing AI. It sits right inside that big AI circle we started with. And this is the key, the absolute game changer. Instead of feeding a machine a bunch of hard-coded rules, machine learning does the opposite. You feed it a ton of data, and you let the machine figure out the rules for itself. It's all about finding patterns and then making predictions based on those patterns. You know, this might sound complicated, but the basic idea is actually pretty simple. If you show a machine learning model a bunch of shapes, it starts to recognize the pattern. It can then predict what the next shape will probably be. But here's where it gets really useful. It can also spot something that doesn't belong, an outlier. This is exactly why ML is a beast in cybersecurity. It's great at spotting weird, fraudulent activity that doesn't fit the normal pattern. So this chart really nails the difference, right? The old way was totally static. A human wrote a rule that said, if you see X, you must do Y. That's it. Machine learning, on the other hand, is adaptive. It looks at the data and says, this looks a whole lot like other examples of X I've seen before, and it learns from that experience. Okay, you with me? Let's peel back another layer. Because inside the world of machine learning, there's a very specific technique that's really the engine behind so many of the crazy breakthroughs we're seeing today, and that's deep learning. So again, on our diagram, deep learning isn't its own separate thing. It's a specialty inside machine learning. This means that all deep learning is machine learning, but not all machine learning uses the deep approach. With every circle we add, we're getting more and more specialized. The powerhouse behind deep learning is something called a neural network, which is a system that's modeled after the way the human brain works. Now, the deep part simply means the network has lots and lots of interconnected layers. That multi-layer structure is what lets it learn really complex patterns, like recognizing not just lines, but shapes, and eventually a specific face in a photo. But all this power and complexity, it comes with a catch. These really deep networks can often feel like a black box. Because there are so many layers processing information in complex ways, it can be almost impossible for a human to understand exactly why it made a certain decision. And that, you can imagine, is a huge deal when these things are making calls about medical diagnoses or loan applications, where explaining your reasoning is absolutely critical. Okay, so all of this amazing groundwork, AI, machine learning, deep learning, it's all been leading up to the explosion that's happening right now.
And that brings us to the very center of our diagram, the incredible creative leap of generative AI. And that brings us right here to the glowing core of our whole picture. Generative AI is really an application that's powered by all these layers we've just talked about, especially deep learning. This is where the magic everyone is talking about really happens. So what makes generative AI so different? It's all about the output. It doesn't just analyze or predict, it creates. It makes brand new, original stuff, text, images, code, you name it. It's often built on what we call foundation models. Just think of these models like a brand new grad with a ton of general knowledge. You can then take that generalist and fine-tune it to be a specialist at all sorts of creative tasks. Probably the best way to get this is to think of it as autocomplete on steroids. You know how your phone tries to predict the next word you're going to type? That's simple prediction. A large language model, an LLM, takes that same core idea and scales it up exponentially. It predicts the next sentence, the next paragraph, even the next chapter. I mean, it's just a mind-boggling leap in scale and capability. Now, you might hear some people argue that this isn't real creativity, that it's just remixing stuff it's already seen. But I love this analogy. Every song ever written is just a recombination of the same handful of notes, right? But nobody says new music doesn't exist. Generative AI is kind of the same thing. It's using the building blocks it was trained on to create something that is genuinely new. And of course, you see this stuff everywhere now, right? The chatbots we all use, tools that can summarize a 50-page report in seconds, software that can clone your voice or create deepfakes, and even systems that are composing music and creating absolutely stunning art. That is all generative AI in action. So let's zoom out. What does all this mean for the future? Well, because of how accessible and powerful generative AI is, the way technology gets adopted has been changed, probably forever. If you look at how this tech has been adopted, the story is wild. Early AI was a slow burn. It was always just around the corner. Machine learning picked up the pace, for sure, but then generative AI hits the scene, and the curve just goes vertical. I mean, straight to the moon. This is the technology that finally put real AI power into the hands of millions of people, overnight. So there it is. From the giant idea of AI, we zoomed into machine learning, then into the mechanics of deep learning, and finally landed at the creative core of generative AI. We have literally built this incredible new engine for civilization. The big multi-trillion-dollar question is, where are we all going to drive this thing?